Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Michael Pimentel, Executive Director of the California Transit Association, and I'm proud to welcome you to this, our first webinar of 2026 on the importance of community engagement in effective transportation planning. We thank all of you on today's webinar for your time and participation. The California Transit Association represents 220 member organizations, including public transit agencies, commuter rail agencies, transit allies, support groups, engineering firms, and more. We're dedicated to advocacy for transit funding, transit-friendly policies, and support for a balanced transit system. As an association, we're committed to ensuring our transit systems benefit and represent the diversity of our state. I speak for our executive committee in expressing our thanks to our panelists and webinar partner, Compto, for bringing forward today's thoughtful conversation. Now, before we jump in and I hand things over to our moderator, I do want to note that folks can ask questions throughout today's webinar presentation by using the Zoom Q&A feature. As we receive those, we'll make note of your questions, and then the moderator will help facilitate discussion in the webinar. And so with that, I'm happy to introduce today's moderator, President and CEO for Compto, April Rye. Thank you, April.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for California Transit Association for the opportunity for us to speak on such an important topic, the importance of community engagement in effective transportation planning. Now, before I introduce my illustrious panelists that are going to join me today, I do want to take a moment of silence as we reflect on the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was a tireless advocate for civil rights and economic opportunity and justice. He had a lifelong commitment to expanding access and breaking barriers, and really left an indelible mark on our nation and the way we work to advance transportation every day at all of our organizations. So if you would please join me in a brief moment of silence. Thank you. So it is my pleasure to introduce my two panelists. My first panelist is the award-winning Kenneth A. McDonald, who serves as president and CEO of Long Beach Transit, where he leads strategic operations, service innovation, and community-centered mobility initiatives in one of Southern California's most dynamic transit markets. Hello, Ken.
Good morning.
And second, I am joined by Mr. Rashidi Barnes, who is a fellow board trustee with me with the Mineta Transportation Institute and serves as the Chief Executive Officer of Eastern Costa Transit Authority, Tri-Delta Transit, overseeing transit services that connect communities throughout Eastern Contra Costa County and the broader Bay Area region. Hello, Rashidi.
Hello, April, and thank you all, and good afternoon.
Thank you so much to both of you for your time today. So I want to just start by helping everyone set the stage and describe to everyone just briefly about the scope and scale of the communities served by the agencies you lead and the scope and scale of your agencies themselves. Kenneth, I want to start with you.
Hey, thank you, April. And I said good morning. I'm in Southern California now. I'm thinking it's morning, but it's good afternoon. So thank you all for being here, all those who decided to participate with us, and April, for you leading this event. As April mentioned, I'm the CEO at Long Beach Transit, and Long Beach Transit provides safe, reliable, accessible transportation for the city of Long Beach and 14 surrounding cities in the southernmost tip of LA County. We have about 38 routes that we provide services on and 255 buses, 800 employees, and we deliver about 19 million annual boarding in 2025. So we are a very diverse urban population that we provide the service for, mostly workers, students, seniors, and a vast majority of those are transit-dependent residents. The diverse community we serve also sharpens our focus on how we think about our service and how we implement that service in the cities that we serve. We're not just responsible to move people. We are also look at our responsibility as connecting community with that has distinct neighborhoods, different cultures, and different needs.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kenneth. So I appreciate that you said there's 800 employees there, and the folks that you're serving are transit dependent. They really need your services to get to where they need to go and to really enjoy life. And you said that you're moving people, but also connecting communities, which is exactly why we are here today. Rashidi, tell us about Tri-Delta Transit and the communities that you serve.
Yeah, thank you again. And I think I do need to say thank you to Ken and congratulations for his award and being recognized the CEO of the year by, I think it was APTA.
That's correct.
Want to definitely tip my hat to you, Ken. Tri-Delta Transit, we serve about 225 square miles in eastern Contra Costa County. We're tucked in a little far east of San Francisco for those who are not familiar with California. We provide four main services, nearly 2 million trips a year, not quite that 19 million that Ken does. We only have 13 fixed routes. We do have a microtransit service with 3 zones that's done very, very well, and then a host of senior and ADA transportation services. Like Long Beach, our demographics are diverse as well, which includes families, commuters, a number of disadvantaged communities, a growing senior population, and a large ADA population. Nearly 50% of our annual trips are work related. And then in a recent survey, the average household income was reported at $42,000. The population of East County that we serve has nearly grown 50% since 2000. And unfortunately, our growth, our residential growth, has not been matched by the job growth. So that goes back to my earlier stat about the 50% of the annual trips being related to work. We are a bedroom community. People live here because they can afford here. They've got pushed out of the urban core, Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco. And now we have to help them get their way back to work on a regular basis.
That is so interesting. Thank you, Rashidi, for that. We're going to talk a little later about adaptation and how things change in the communities that we serve, and transit has to change with it. But I appreciate you saying 220 square miles and 13 fixed routes. And I love the fact that you highlighted that you have a growing senior population and a population who needs additional services, people with disabilities. That is something that we have to address as we look at the needs of the community. So thank you both so much for being here. I'll just take a couple minutes to share a little bit about Compto for those who may not know. I have the pleasure of serving as president and CEO since 2021. And this year, as you can see from my screen, Compto is celebrating 55 years in operation this year. So it's very, very exciting to be at the helm of such an exciting time within the transportation industry and association a space. But Compto is really more than an association. We really sit at the intersection of agencies and communities, translating communities' needs into transportation solutions and trying to connect people who can deliver for them. So we have 41 chapters across North America. And, I would describe it as if agencies are the backbone of the system, Compto is the circulatory system, kind of moving ideas and trust and talent and opportunities where they're needed the most. So we work across transit, DOTs, MPOs, local governments, private sector, but really our work is grounded locally within our local chapters. And it's through those partnerships that we can stay close to the communities and help agencies kind of understand what those communities need and hopefully be a partner in turning those needs into practical solutions. Compto was also selected as a national capacity builder for USDOT's Thriving Communities program. And there we serve 16 communities as they move critical transportation projects forward. And we have 2 communities in California. One is the Gateway Cities COG, moving the 710 Livability Initiative forward, and also the town of Pixley in Tulare County, California. So happy to have some work specifically in California with communities who are doing great things. So let's kind of jump into the discussion. Transportation agencies are often measured by safety, efficiency, on-time delivery, but really at the core, we're in the people business. right? So how do you work to integrate community voices and local priorities into your decision-making process? Rashidi, I'd love to start with you on that.
Yeah, so this past year, Tri-Delta Transit went through one of our most, if not most significant route and schedule change in our history. We utilize all means at our disposal to reach the public to ensure that we understood the ideas, the needs, the interests, and the changes in travel trends. And we're not just talking, COVID. We will be 50 years in existence here next year. And we haven't done this seismic listening session like we've done recently. So it was needed. And so our outreach efforts included, social media, billboards, online resources. We did Zoom meetings. We also worked with our CBOs, our veterans, and our local community college, and actually did pop-ups at their venues. So we went to where the people are or were, especially with our CBOs, where you have a lot of students that their voices are typically not listened to. And so we wanted to make sure that we engaged with them and as well as our veterans as well to get the perspective of those individuals that typically are not heard. And for us, our community college is our second largest population for ridership next to a BART station. So it was important that we step foot on our community college, work closely with them, and to hear what their voices, concerns, and issues were.
That is excellent. And early congratulations to Tri Delta Transit on 50 years in 2027.
Thank you.
So that makes sense that you're in the listening phase, and it's time for you to hear back from the community and appreciate that you're meeting people where they are. You talked about the community college being the second largest ridership. So absolutely, hearing from those folks and understanding what their needs are, that's the only way to make sure we're serving them well. Kenneth, what would you say about integrating community voices and local priorities into your decision-making process? How do you approach that?
Yeah, I would say as we're talking about how long agency's been around, we just celebrated our 62nd year. So we've been in this business at Long Beach Transit for quite a while. We are wedged. I think I said a little bit about that earlier. We are in the southernmost tip of LA County and just north of Orange County, and we're wedged between two large transit agency, LA Metro to the north, who just jams us on one side, and OCTA, Orange County on the south, so we were wedged between those two. And part of there are about 14 cities that we provide services to in this area that we're in, 101 square miles. So what you're seeing is very dense urban area is what Rashidi said he's like twice the size of our service that he provides. But we were in a much smaller area, in a much denser urban area. So one of the things that we do from time to time, our plan is that every 7 years we do a comprehensive operational analysis. Is our service going where people want to go? Are we really addressing access to transit? And when I look at access to transit as the CEO, I look at three things: availability, affordability, and payment simplicity. Not big. We don't put a lot of big words into it on descriptive of what we're doing, but is the service available where folks want to go? Is it affordable? And do we make payment of our system simple? I've noticed that we tend to, everyone goes and now it's quick at the board. Let's go to more of a credit card type, and yes, that helps a lot. But we begin to when I look at I give you an example of that. We had a family that came on our buses, wanted to go. The guy had $20. We didn't have a credit card. We didn't a credit card to, payment. Couldn't pay for his family with $20 because we don't give change. I'm not saying that we come up with a plan to have to give change, but those are things that affect what did our operator do? Give him a complimentary ride at that point on how we deal with those types of things. But yes, coming in terms of how we do it, each year we do a yearly customer survey, both for people who use our system and people who don't. So we try to get why don't you use the transit system? And the ones who use the transit system, what are we doing that really addresses the access to transits that I talked about. So the comprehensive operation analysis really helps us to determine where our service should go. How do we design that service? I'll give another example of how we use this. We were doing our comprehensive operation and analysis, and we were looking at a 10-year, we look at 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. In our 10-year plan, we had commuter bus service. We decided we wanted to look at commuter bus from Long Beach to UCLA. While we were doing public outreach to find out about this, UCLA came to me and said, we would like to work with you guys to take the 10-year plan and make it a 1-year plan. Can we? Because there are a lot of people that would like to come from, there's a lot of bad traffic down here, come from the 55% of the people, we did a survey, that were living or working and going to school in UCLA, lived in our general area. So there was a big opportunity to do that. So we moved what is a 10-year plan into a 1-year plan. And we started providing, last year we bought these double-decker buses, and now we start providing direct service from our airport, which, if you can see in the back of me, I closed that off, but our airport runway is right at the back of my office here. So from the airport down to UCLA, we provide services. And this young lady came to me and said, I had just turned down a job at UCLA. If you all are really putting this, I'm going to tell them I'm going to take the job. So now I have public transportation because I did not want to drive from Long Beach to UCLA every day. So you can see where that becomes. I think I give that story to show when we ask our customers, you learn how they use the system and what can we do to continue to improve their accessibility, affordability, and the payment simplicity that I talked about of access to transit services.
Excellent. Excellent. When you ask, you learn, is what I heard. And with this dense urban area that you're serving, like you said, it's about availability, affordability, and making sure the payment access is simple. And sometimes if we don't ask, we don't realize what people's circumstances are. We think, like you stated, everybody is tap to go. Well, some people they're cash only. Some people don't have tap to go. So then how do we manage it? So kudos to your operator for giving them complimentary service, knowing that they wanted to pay. They didn't want to be a fare evader, but just didn't have an ability to do that. But the importance of hearing those community voices so that you can make sure you're providing services that are actually helpful. And you talked about that yearly customer survey and focusing on people who don't use the system. Why not? And then you find out, okay, we've got people who need to go straight from the airport to UCLA, or these patterns that we're going to talk about later are constantly changing as the needs of the people we serve change. Excellent from both of you. I'll just share some things that we've kind of learned at Compto, especially through our work as a national capacity builder in transportation, is that community engagement can't be a task force that sunsets or performative. It has to be continuous and connected to real decisions. And so we have seen so many times that engagement works best when it's treated as a core part of the infrastructure, a core part of your planning. Ken, you talked about this comprehensive operational analysis. And Rashida, you talked about these different groups and these perspectives that are so important that you hear from, understanding your population's age, their abilities, and their needs. And so we've constantly seen that agencies are most successful when the engagement is embedded early, before decisions are made and before projects are fully scoped. And when they partner with trusted organizations. Rashida, you talked about your CBOs and the veteran groups and others. And Ken, you've been a longtime member of Compto, and you work with trusted organizations who have relationships with the residents. And that is so important. And that's something that Compto is continuing to try to do. Share best practices, connect people to the leaders who can serve them well. And once again, kind of translate community input into the planning pieces with agencies as a partner. Okay, so let's talk about success stories. Like when this goes well, when community engagement goes well, what are the outcomes that you all have seen for the communities you serve and for your agency's ability to kind of deliver this effective and sustainable service. And I really want to talk about this from a community impact perspective, but also the business case, the
Yeah.
business performance perspective. Ken, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah. I think I know when it's done well, you build public trust. And that's an important thing with transit because uh, paramount for us is safety and security. Whenever we do a annual public the ridership survey or the customer survey, we always get that safety is way up there in terms of the accessibility or where does the transit system go, but safety becomes number one. So when you do real good public engagement, you get the public trust. They give you that where are the challenges, what it is, and they feel like their voices are included in the decision that you're making because people do look at that in terms of the agency's real decisions. So for us, it means smoother implementation and smarter investments. We don't just put a route because we didn't study why that route needs to be there. And you get there are a lot of people who always want a new route. We want to go in another direction, but getting that engagement, make sure that that route is really going to be used or is needed, not just that we put service out and not understanding, like I explained with that UCLA, we know that it's having an impact to changing people's lives, and that's so important. From a business perspective, though, it's also good community engagement, strengthens partnership. The businesses know that the people can get to work. I mean, 71% of the people that use our services are transit dependent. 48% of those people use it 5 days a week. So if you have that high, almost 50% of the people that use our systems on a day-to-day basis use it 5 days a week. Where are they going? To work, to school, to medical appointment. Even, I was on our bus there, and this young man came on. He had a set of golf clubs on his back. In an urban area, you can do that. You grab your golf clubs, you get on the bus.
That's a
I had never
dedicated
done it.
golfer, Ken. Wow. That's a lot. I play golf. I haven't taken the bus to play golf, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I had never done that either, but I saw this guy, his bags in, jumped off, and because of the golf course was there was a stop right at the golf course, directly
Wow.
across from our airport. So
I
things
love
like
it.
that you look at, and not only we look at businesses and we look at people going to school, but also the point of recreation. And so
Right.
we started a program here that we look at how can we increase. Everyone talks about Monday to Friday. How can we increase weekend ridership? And if we get people to be acceptable to the weekend ridership, we believe it's going to turn to probably trying the system on a weekday. Park your car up and go to an event. If there are events, teach people how to get to the event, how to use the transit system to get there. So I do believe that once we do it right, it improves customer satisfaction. It improves and strengthens the business partnership. It gives people opportunity to live without a car. So there are a lot of things, a lot of that point about when I talk about public trust, that if we do it well, it really improves trust and all of the things that I mentioned there in terms of access to using the system.
I love it. And, that's such an interesting point that you brought up about seeing an increase in ridership for recreation here in Washington, D.C. area post-pandemic. That was the most surprising increase in ridership was on nights and weekends.
Yep.
And so, the patterns of folks who utilize transit definitely are shifting. And it's so important, like you stated, for public trust, but also for responsible use of taxpayer funds and operational funds, that we do this engagement early and often so that we are really meeting the needs of everyone. Rashidi, what would you say about the outcomes that you see, not only from the business perspective, but also from the community impact when you do this engagement kind of early and often?
So I've been on the private side of public transit for a decade at least. And so when I took over this position 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now, can't remember. My predecessor was here
Because
for
you're having
30.
fun, Rashidi. That's why you can't.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure people know that. Okay, go ahead.
My predecessor was here for 32 of the 50 years. So our culture is our culture, right? And so for me to be the new guy on the block, one of the things that I wanted to instill in my team is that we are a CBO. I mean, we just don't move people. That's not just what we're doing. We are a community-based organization where we are trying to better the community in every aspect that we do, whether it's reinvesting dollars into our communities through procurements, whether it's moving people, whether it's participating in job fairs, participating in whatever the community needs, we are there. And Tri-Delta Transit has been there for almost 50 years. So changes the mindset of my staff so that they understand the value that they have has been important and key to even gaining that level of trust when we're out there in the streets and working with other CBOs, our riders, and thus far. So that was one of the biggest things that I had to do internally. We're not even talking about externally with regards to our external stakeholders. But for me, and I learned this way back when I started with Foothill Transit and Doran Barnes and his team, you know, for example, our managers need to be in the community. We need to be at the job fairs. We need to be at working with the Chamber of Commerce in the various cities that we're in, because we need to make sure that people understand who Tri-Delta Transit is, what economic importance we bring to the community, and how we are not just moving people, but we are a staple in the community. Whether you're a senior, a veteran, whoever you are, there's a role for Tri-Delta Transit plays a role in even just getting people off the roads to make your traffic a journey daily a little bit easier. So it's a lot, and to Ken's point earlier, we need to be more flexible. Our system hadn't been revamped in decades. And so my goal is every 5 to 10 years, we look at those travel trends, how they've morphed. We're in a portion of the Bay Area, once again, like I've said earlier, where people are getting pushed out of the urban core and are moving here. And so we need to make sure that we're able to help to accommodate some of that movement. So there's a lot going on. One of the things also I've learned is that you have to attend those job fairs, whether it's a senior services or a youth organization, colleges, veterans groups. We've learned so much just being engaged. And so that goes back to my earlier comment about being a CBO. You have to be engaged, you have to listen. And so for the last 3 or 4 years, that's what we've been doing, is just listening so we can understand and gain that trust from the community that we serve.
I love that perspective so much, Rashidi, that transit authorities are community-based organizations, your CBOs. Love, love, love that. And like you said, that changes the mindset of your staff. Managers are in the community, and hopefully all of them are riding the system at some point, right? And you're attending these job fairs and you're talking to the real people, and that helps you understand how things are changing, as well as looking at trends and understanding, like you stated, people are struggling to live in certain parts, so they're moving to your area, which means they'll utilize your system more. And then where are they going and what are their needs? So I appreciate that, the need to be more flexible. And just want to make sure I remind the folks listening in that if you have a question for these phenomenal gentlemen or myself, you can use the Q&A feature. So just put your question into the Q&A feature if you have questions for any of the panelists, and we'll get to you a little later. But I will share from Compto's perspective, the outcomes are better on every front when community engagement is done well, because the community is seeing that their feedback is being reflected in the reality of the system. And I think that's one of the most important things. Even if their feedback isn't used, even just knowing that it's heard, thank you for sharing that. We're taking it into consideration. Then people don't get that feedback fatigue, where you keep asking, but then they don't see any response or that you've even heard them. And so that trust is not growing. But what we've observed nationally is that engagement reduces risk. So from the business development side and the project delivery side, issues surface earlier, solutions are more realistic, and then agencies are better positioned to adapt when conditions change. And so in that case, the community engagement, it's not just the right thing to do, it's a smart business strategy, and it supports long-term system performance. And one of the stories I love to tell, and some of you who know Compto know this, but out in Missouri, COMTO was brought in after community opposition kind of escalated to the point where projects were being threatened to not being able to be started. There was the threat of a protest before the work on the interstate was going to take place. And so COMTO was brought in. And it was really about cost escalation, delays, and a loss of public trust. So we were brought in to kind of assist with the community engagement and help de-escalate things, clarify things that were misunderstood, and create a space for the agency to hear what was really driving the community concern. And that work resulted in kind of a 7-step program where the community got things on a list of what they felt were important, and they were able to be addressed. And from a business perspective, the outcome was amazing. There was fewer disruptions. The project delivered on time, under budget, and with the largest usage of small businesses that had ever been done at the time. And it was utilized later in Kentucky and a couple of other states as a model. So if anybody wants to have a fun history fact, just go onto YouTube and just Google or just type in COMTO Missouri model. And there's like a little 2-minute video about what we did with that agency to help to support that. But the fact is, community engagement is important not only for community trust, but also for the business case of making sure that projects move forward without delays and that public funds are utilized well. So that brings me to the next question about COMTO and associations like COMTO. We're deeply embedded in communities and professional networks. And I'd love to talk to you all about how associations can help transit agencies strengthen trust and expand engagement capacity and kind of bridge the gap between agencies and the communities you serve. And each of you have experiences working with agencies like COMTO and WTS and California Transit Association and many other associations that are embedded in this way. Rashidi, what would you say?
Yeah, excuse me. At the local level, local chapters of COMTO, LIT, for example,
Mhm.
should work with the agencies or could work with agencies to bring the CBOs into the fold. So one of the things I've learned and I appreciate actually is that, I mean, and we all know this, youth that we invest in today, especially from a transit perspective, end up being lifetime transit riders, wherever they end up. So, from a COMTO local perspective or a LIT local perspective, investing in those local groups, CBOs, even programs at the high school level that are maybe transit-based, AI-based, could help invest in those students so that they can get to the next level. And I know COMTO does that a lot in the different chapters. I know Miami chapter does that. Philadelphia chapter does that as well. But I think that at the local level could help a lot. And then from a state association level, in establishing some type of annual award that goes to a CBO whose advocacy is in line with that of the state association as well as the local transit agency could help bolster collaboration, strengthen the trust, and bridge the gap between agencies and the community. So that's another opportunity I think that where the state association can help. And I know it's a big state if we're just talking about California, a ton of agencies and CBOs, but that may be an opportunity to bring those CBOs in the fold once or twice a year.
Love that idea about creating an award that goes to a CBO. Love that because I don't actually know if we have a lot of awards that each of us give away, but not typically to a CBO. So,
And as you know, the CBOs, they need the funding, right? And
right.
they are willing to be advocates,
Mhm.
especially if their advocacy is in line with the agency or the state association.
Mhm.
There's a lot of opportunity there.
Right.
And we just have to tap into it.
100%. And then, of course, investing in the youth, 100% important. And as you know, COMTO has a national scholarship, but then we've also got scholarships at the local level, and then many youth-related programs. We have a long-standing one related to Garrett A. Morgan that's really focused on getting even younger folks interested in careers in transit. But love those two ideas, especially the one about creating an award for a CBO, because like I stated, I don't think anybody's doing that. So you heard it here first, friends. It's happening. Ken, what
Yeah.
would you say? How can associations help transit agencies?
I have to say I've been with a member of COMTO maybe 20 plus years. I think
Mhm,
it was early when COMTO began that someone introduced me to it and I got involved.
mhm,
Um, and it was the first place that I went to and I saw, I was a young person in transit and I saw leaders that looked like myself. Most of the transit agency, when I went to a conference, they never looked like me. And then
mhm,
I got to this conference and almost everybody looked like me. And I thought, wow, I got to stay involved in this because I got to learn from these folks. And I did from the people who were before me that were involved in transit, who a lot of advice gave a lot of advice and mentorship to me about coming into transit, how to stay out of trouble. How to go to conferences and don't drink too much. They took you under their wings and helped you to make sure that you stay professional. And I think that helped me a lot in where
mm,
I am today. That the exposure to the people that I met who look like me made a lot of difference in terms of my career differences. So for me, I can say it had a really profound effect on understanding how diversity really is important. And we know that's a bad word now, but how important that is for us learning and learning from people who have gone through some of the struggles that we are going through on a day-to-day basis. But I do believe that COMTO brings to a lot of diversity to introducing people to transit that are not, a lot of people. I don't know much people who go to college and think, well, I want to work for a transit agency. Most of us has come into this by I don't know if it's accident, but it wasn't. You weren't in college thinking I'm going to come out of college and I want to go work for a transit agency. So what I like about the fact with COMTO is that it really, all agencies like COMTO, WTS, the other ones that are involved, and that out there, is that you expose people to the industry. I am a background an electrical engineer. When I was in college, transit was not my first thought. So getting that exposure, like I said, when I started meeting people who helped me while I was in the transit agency as a young engineering person, helped me to better understand, wow, there's a career in this industry. So I think that's a really good power that somebody like COMTO, CTA, how the organizations that help to introduce you to public transit and the careers that are in public transit.
Ken, I couldn't agree with you more. A lot of folks that I have spoken to, myself included, like you stated, fell into transportation, right? It was not where I started my career, but it's where I ended up. And we would love to have folks choose transportation as a career. And part of that, like you stated, is exposure. And then with exposure comes mentorship and teaching folks what to do or what not to do. And associations really are conveners in that way, trusted conveners, not only to see other leadership, but also to kind of connect people who come from different disciplines, whether it's the community, or whether it's from the policy side, or whether it's from within the agencies. It's just so important that associations bring people together in productive ways. And because it's a professional network, we can kind of help expand capacity and kind of make workforce connections and like I said earlier, create safe spaces for truth, honest dialogue. And it's just been proven time and time again that when agencies work alongside associations, then everybody benefits, not only for sharing of best practices and expertise, but relationships. And in the end, it's relationships that make anything successful. And
Right.
so it's just so wonderful when we can all work together because in the end, we're in a people business and we all care about moving people efficiently and effectively. So let me take us to kind of my last question before we kind of dive into Q&A. So all the folks that are on the call, if you have a question for the award-winning Kenneth McDonald or for Rashidi Barnes, please put it into the chat. But here is our last question. So we've talked about adapting. Each of you have talked about the shifting needs of the community that you've learned through feedback and through being out there in the streets, learning from others. But how does effective transportation planning incorporate adaptation? It could be because of demographic shifts, economic changes, or emerging community needs. Like Rashidi said, people moving from highly expensive places into his area. Why is ongoing engagement essential to getting that right? Adapting. Ken, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to start with a book I read a long time ago, and it was about a restaurant. This was a restaurant owner in New York, and he made this point that the customer is not always right. However, the customer must always be heard and listened to. And I thought that was, we always have this thing about the customer is always right. But you must always listen. You must always hear what the customers are telling you. I think a lot of time we go from this because they cannot be always right. Let me make that totally clear. But they are, if you're not, you as an agency, transit agency, or any public entity or any business, you have to listen to the customer and make sure that they're heard, not just listen and okay, well, they said it and move on. I think that is a very important part of how we design and we adapt in public transit. So when you have shifts or changes that are going on, that you are responsible in the way that you implement those changes. A couple of years ago, I was involved. We had this thing that if it's a low performing route, just get rid of it. We should, in transit, we have a low performing route, get rid of it. So the planning folks came to me and said that they came up with this route. There were only 6 people that were traveling on the route on the first trip in the morning. And they think that, and this is at 5 a.m., the trip was somewhere between 4:40 and 5 a.m. And they come up with this, well, we should get rid of this route because it's so lowly productive. And my question was, where do you think these 6 people are going at 5 o'clock in the morning? Rob a bank? Steal some from somebody? They're going to make a living. And what was really touching for me about that, my mother was a maid for someone when I was growing up. I'm in a transit agency and I have the authority to make. That's the kind of decision that I would not have been where I am if somebody had made that decision to cut the route because only 6 people are traveling at 5 o'clock in the morning. And so sometimes when we make these things, we have to be really understanding about the impact. When I ask, well, what would the people, the 6 people do? Well, there's another route a quarter of a mile away. If any one of you all ever got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and have to walk a quarter of a mile and to get every day to go to work. So sometimes there are things that we do that we just look at the economic impact and not the social impact of what's going on. So, and that is so important that we stay focused on how we cultivate that relationship. How do you make sure that the customers are listened to? And that's why I think when you asked that question, the first thing that came to my mind was that they're not always right, but they have to be listened to and they have to be heard. And we have to be looking at how we design the services to include all of the people who have no other choices. But economically, we made the decision. We go to our boards or wherever, we decide, yes, get rid of it. And now we have destroyed 6 lives that were really important, that were just trying to make a living because we are insensitive to how that changes of the demographics, the adapting to things that are happening. And we're more concerned about the economic impact. I am, as a CEO, let me make this clear, concerned about the economic impact, but I have to balance that with the impact of the people we serve.
Absolutely. That's powerful, Ken. Actually, it's pretty powerful, especially you sharing about your humble beginnings and your mother. And, hey, I'm sure she was getting up really early in the morning too, to go take care of the family that she was cleaning for. And like you stated, if we listen, then we can adapt responsibly and think about the social impact of the decisions that are being made. And to your point, yes, you have to think about the bottom line, but we are in the people business. And so we have to think about human-centered decision making.
Yep.
Not an easy job. That's why you're an award winner, because you do it so well. Rashidi, what would you say about adaptation?
So I grew up in the Bay Area. So I'm a Berkeley kid. Excuse me. I grew up riding AC Transit. I grew up riding BART. And so I still ride the systems today. And so when we talk about effective transportation planning, to Ken's point, you got to ride the system before you're able to really make those educated decisions on cutting a route, cutting a service. And I get it. I understand the economics behind it. To Ken's point, we are CEOs. However, there is a social aspect to it that you have to understand. And one of the things that we made sure when we were going through our recent COA, comprehensive service analysis, was we wanted to speak with the operators. That's one of the voices that are typically unheard. And so we went to the operators many times in group settings, through QR codes, through surveys to say, hey, what are we doing wrong? If we cut this, what is going to happen? What are you hearing? Because they are the eyes and ears of our system on a regular basis. They develop those relationships. They know that child that has to get up at 5 a.m. to get across town just to get to a better school. They know about all this. And so it's important for us to also engage our operators so that we better understand the impacts, social impacts that we're making with the decisions that we have here in our little silos sometimes. And then just on your last part of your question, in terms of essentially, staying engaged.
Mhm.
And I talked about this before with our connection with our junior college. Like, it took me to go meet with the chancellors and to understand that they had a very robust, heavy duty automotive program. Since then, we've hired 4 full-time mechanics to backfill retired spots. And now we're working on a program where potentially, because they don't have the physical space, where they can teach curriculum in our facility on a 40-foot bus, alternative fuel, and a diesel vehicle. So my point being is that we have to remain engaged in listening to the community at all times, whether it's a community college or whether it's our operators, to see where we can meet people at once again. And Ken talked about this a little bit as well. We all know that safety and security is number one. No matter, you have a very safe system or you don't, it doesn't matter. We're all tied together. We heard those unfortunate events that happened in North Carolina, I think it was, or in Charlotte. That tainted us all. And so one of the things that I've been doing is work with my local police departments, because we're a small agency and we're in 4 different cities. Also, we interact with BART. And then also we drive on the highway, so we have to call CHP if there's an event. We're working with all of them to make sure that we, Untitled Transit, are part of the community policing program, whatever it is, whatever that means. And for me, if my bus is at a layover spot, just walk on the bus, say hi to the operator, shake his or her hand. How's your day going? Is there anything going on? But once again, I want to make sure my operators are safe, but also make sure that our passengers are safe. So if we can attack that, then once again, we're hearing to what people are saying. If they're saying safety and security is number one, we're trying to do something about that. And so, working with the local PD departments, various police departments, whether you're at a BART station or in the city of Pittsburgh, to me, that's going to remove that barrier, hopefully, and make people feel safe with coming back onto all of our systems, no matter where they're at.
Love everything that you said, Rashidi, especially the need to adapt by keeping your finger on the pulse for those who are moving your system, whether that's the operators. But then also, I appreciate how you stated you have to stay connected to the leadership with the higher ed community and with your law enforcement leadership and probably politicians and just everybody in the ecosphere. That's who you have to stay connected to make sure that you are effective in this transportation planning and writing the system. And I appreciate what you said about just jumping on, connecting when you have an opportunity to do so, because that allows us to adapt smart. Something that we've seen at Comto is just how engagement allows agencies to stay ahead rather than react after the fact.
Yep.
Because if you're having ongoing engagement, it creates those feedback loops, and that helps you to adapt your investments and your operations over time instead of locking into a solution that no longer fits. And so in that way, this ongoing engagement becomes a tool for resilience. And that's really what everybody wants, a resilient, safe system that people are being served by. What a robust conversation. You all are amazing. And I am sure that we have some questions in the chat here from our audience. So let me thank California Transit Association and Michael Pimentel just one more time for the opportunity to have this amazing conversation. And let me take a look at the Q&A to see what questions we have going on here. Okay, here is a question for the award-winning Kenneth McDonald. What types of survey methods, paper, online, social media, polls, etc., do you find are most useful in reaching both demographics, those who ride and those who don't? What type of survey methods? Paper, online, social media polls? What type of survey methods are you guys utilizing?
For people who do not, I speak for the people who do not use the system. Mostly, it's paper and social media and outreach in the term, because they're not writing the system, so you can't speak directly to them. So a lot of it is paper connection or phone calls. They would get numbers, and we have a phone tree that we will go through. So that's how we go to the people who don't ride the system. I believe that the ones who are on the system, we should ask them directly. So mostly we do those surveys on the buses or at the bus stop, because then you know they're really a person who is riding the system. And so that's our approach, that we separate them, that if we're doing one that is, you do have the ability to send in answers if you wanted to, but we try our best to meet them where they are on the system.
I love it. Meet them where they are. Make sure you're getting the feedback from actual riders. Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, Ken. For Rashidi, as you talk about the operator COA survey, San Diego MTS is looking to do similar engagement with operators. What questions did you find most helpful to get the data and feedback needed? Did you survey before a proposal, after proposals went out, or both?
Yeah, they were engaged from the get-go. And so one of the things that we did was, I think, 2 or 3 phases. The first was just, hey, tell us what is wrong with the system today, and then gathered that feedback, and then took that and coupled that with what we heard from passengers. And then after some time, refined that, came up with a few maybe changes. Say, okay, here's what you said were the issues. How does the system look now, just on paper? Right, we put a big board up. We allow for folks, operators, to utilize notepads and basically just give us a comment. What do you think? Should we make a left here? Should we make a right here? Like, what should we be doing? And then gather that feedback. And then lastly, came back to them and said, hey, okay, here's our 2 scenarios. Tell us what you think about this. What are we missing? And we gathered their feedback there. And so now, fast forward, I think 6 months later, we're going back to them and say, okay, what are you hearing? We all agreed that, well, this is what our final system was going to look like. Now, what are you hearing from the riders? And then we're going to take that feedback, couple that with any kind of customer complaints that we've received as well, and then just continuously chew at this and try to make sure that we find a system, once again, like I said, that's flexible, because I know tomorrow the travel trends are going to change. So we're just trying to keep that in mind, as well as be cost effective at the end of the day. But engagement with our operators has been key, and our supervisors. And so that's been really important for us to reach the achievements that we've reached thus far.
Excellent. I want to ask both of you one last question before we make sure that we get a couple of last items before our time expires. Do you all incentivize folks to take surveys? Have you ever incentivized folks to provide feedback? Can
you repeat the question for me?
Have you ever incentivized responses to surveys, like provided some type of incentive for folks to respond to surveys?
We have not.
Okay.
if
Okay.
not in Long Beach Transit. Internally, when we, like what CD was talking, when we speak to operators, we do put, when we have employee survey, we try to give, like, if we would to have some raffle drawing to entice folks to participate, but externally, no, we don't.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Rashidi, have you ever given an incentive to community folks to respond to a survey or participate?
Yes, we did. Community folks, especially through our COA process. That's how that was one of the ways we got a lot of engagement in working directly with our CBOs. And so the team that went out, they identify X amount of CBOs in certain geographical areas, and said, "Hey, okay, do you want to be a part of this? This is what it entails. Blah blah blah." It produced some great tangible opportunities for us for further engagement as well.
Excellent. And something that we've seen at Compto working with organizations and agencies is that sometimes they'll incentivize with a free ride if folks are willing to provide feedback. And then in a little bit more structured cases, a community advisory council will be formed, and then those participants will be compensated for their time. Love that structure when we can get it, but I know sometimes it's tough to get funding for incentivizing a community advisory council. I want to thank you, gentlemen, so much for your valuable time today, and all of our attendees for your time and listening. There's some information here on a QR code. If you want to learn more about Compto or more about the California Transit Association, just scan that QR code so you can connect with us. And in addition, I would love to invite everyone to join Compto for our 55th National Meeting and Training Conference, taking place right back where it all started in Washington, D.C. It will be a beautiful summertime conference. Come on down, bring your kids, see all the amazing memorials and all of the Smithsonian. There's so many things to see in Washington, D.C. So we hope you will join us for the conference. I'm going to turn it over to Rashidi to tell you about the next CTA webinar.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Mineta Transportation Institute, I am a board member, and this
Me
championing
too.
women in April is as well. Sorry about that. There is going to be a panel next month for Women's History Month. I encourage everyone to participate, and the registration is open now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, California Transit Association. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, the entire team, for the opportunity to talk about this amazing topic. This is going to be put out online, so if you know of folks who aren't able to join, they can watch the recording. Thanks so much to everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Right.